Welcome. This is David Boles, Human Meme. Today's topic, Crime Story, The Peril of Caril Ann. It was a slow gin sort of day in Lincoln, Nebraska, with a pomegranate sun dying hard against a slate-gray sky. As 13-year-old Caril Ann met Charlie, a red-haired boy who loved James Dean and was 5 years her senior. Charlie didn't like people much, except for Caril Ann. Schoolmates bullied him early in his life. He stuttered and was born bow-legged. However, once Charlie started lifting weights, he found his power. He learned how to defend himself. And Charlie knew it was his job in life to take down anyone above him. And that meant most of the rest of the world. Over a year or two, Caril Ann broke up with Charlie several times, but he always ended up returning, hangdog, to her side.
He started arguing and stuff, and then he left, and then he came back, same night, and this time I told my mom, tell him I meant it, okay? And my mom then told him, and this is where an argument came in, that she had told him, I meant what I said, and go away, and don't come back, and all this kind of stuff. And at that time, his words were to me, if I can have you, I'm going to make sure that no man ever has you. And that's one prophecy that he has seen too.
Charlie shot and killed a gas station attendant on November 30, 1957. The reason? He didn't sell him a stuffed animal on credit. Charlie didn't quite believe in craft or class. He knew the only people created equal on earth were those who were already dead in the ground. On January 21, 1958, Charlie went to see Caril Ann again, even though he knew she did not want to see him again. Caril Ann wasn't home, so after Caril Ann's mother and stepfather told Charlie to go away because he wasn't wanted anymore, Charlie shot them both with a shotgun, and then stabbed and killed their child. That child was Caril Ann's 2-year-old stepsister. All the bodies were hid out back. When Caril Ann returned home, she found Charlie hiding behind the door, holding a shotgun aimed at her. And he told her he'd kill her entire family if she didn't do what he said.
He shoved the gun into my face and had me sit in a rocking chair. And this is when he told me at that time that my family was over at this woman's house, and if I did what I was told, they wouldn't be hurt. All he had to do was make a phone call and they would die.
Charlie told Caril Ann her family was being held hostage by a friend of his. And with one phone call from him, they'd all be dead. Charlie and Caril Ann stayed in the empty house a while. Caril Ann even wrote a note and posted it on the door saying the family was sick and to not enter. And she signed that note using the name of her 2-year-old stepsister, hoping someone on the outside would figure out something inside that house was wrong. When Caril Ann's sister arrived at the family home for a visit and was fast sent away by Caril Ann, suspicions began to arise, and Charlie decided it was time to get out of town. Charlie drove Caril Ann out of Lincoln, 16 miles down to Bennett, Nebraska, and the home of a family friend. Upon arrival, Charlie shot that friend, a 70-year-old, with his shotgun, and Charlie also killed the family dog. Caril Ann was warned again that with just one phone call, Caril Ann's entire family would be murdered if she didn't continue to do what he said.
Now, I'm thinking now, he's killed. I know what he's capable of. And I'm going, whoa, I better be very careful and don't cross him. Because if he could bring that gun up in an instant and wipe out this man's life, that he don't really, what could he do to me?
Charlie and Caril Ann were again on the move, and they crashed their car into a mud pit. When two teens in their own car offered them a ride, Charlie forced the couple to drive to an abandoned storm shelter in Bennett, Nebraska. That's where Charlie shot the boy in the back of the head and tried to rape the girl, but he couldn't finish. And so he shot her too. Charlie took their car and drove away with Caril Ann by his side.
And Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they asked him, they said, how can a father come to this kind of conclusion? He said, that's what my son would say.
Arriving back in Lincoln, Charlie went to the fancy part of town where all the rich people lived and broke into a random home. Charlie stabbed the wife to death and stabbed the maid to death and then broke the neck of the family dog. When the husband returned home, Charlie shot him too. Charlie stuffed his pockets with rings and jewelry, and he and Caril Ann took the family's black Packard and left the state of Nebraska.
I mean, an entire state was terrified. But my God, he had me in his clutches. And I was not a Bonnie and Clyde having fun as it was depicted.
With the entire Midwest now looking for them, Charlie knew he had to get rid of that Packard. He found a traveling salesman asleep on the side of the road near Douglas, Wyoming. Charlie shot him and took his car. When the salesman's car stalled and another car stopped to help them, Charlie threatened to shoot the guy if he didn't hand over his car. The two started fighting. A deputy sheriff soon arrived on the scene. And for the first time, Caril Ann was able to break away from Charlie. And she ran to the deputy, waving her arms, screaming, "He's Starkweather! He's going to kill us all!"
Or ordered me or anything to do on those people, but I don't know if he had them, if I would have. I don't know, because he never asked it of me or ordered me to, but I don't know. I don't know if I would have, if it meant, I'm sorry. It is just so painful.
Charlie jumped into the car and sped away without Caril Ann. He was racing at over 100 miles per hour. The chase was on. Shots were fired at Charlie. The windshield shattered, cutting him. Charlie surrendered, fearing he'd die of blood loss. There was no shootout. Charlie didn't die in a hail of bullets. 11 murders were enough for him. All of them now equal to each other, and soon to him as well. All dead on the ground. The county sheriff said he thought he was bleeding to death. That's why he stopped. That's the kind of yellow son of a bitch he is. Charlie told authorities he'd kidnapped Caril Ann and that she had nothing to do with any of the murders. Charlie changed his story 9 times, and later, at trial, he blamed Caril Ann for half of the murders, claiming she's the most trigger-happy person he'd ever met. And Charlie said all that against Caril Ann only after prosecutors told her to write Charlie a letter from jail, telling him she never wanted to see him again.
I presented to the public, this person that, well, look at, she's hard and she's this and she's that, not knowing that behind that was a person that was terrified, and hanging on, please, God, don't let me lose my mind. That was my prayer. Don't let me lose my mind after what I'd been through.
Caril Ann told authorities she thought she was going along with what Charlie did in order to save her family. She had no idea he'd already killed them all on day 1.
My God, girl, your family's dead. And it was at that point that nothing meant really anything, because I had felt that, that I had failed to save him. I had how many days that I'd spent with this man, and thought what I was doing, was saving him. And then to find out later that they were already dead,
Nobody in the state of Nebraska believed Caril Ann Fugate wasn't a murderer.
To have one person in Nebraska who always believed, with no doubt, that I was guilty, understand what transpired through this, and say to me, I might have been wrong.
On June 25th, 1959, at 12:04 a.m., Charles Raymond Charlie Starkweather was executed in the electric chair by the state of Nebraska. Dead, equalized at 20 years old. Charles Starkweather was the last person in Nebraska to be killed in the electric chair. He is buried in Wyuka Cemetery in the center of Lincoln, Nebraska, along with 5 of his victims. All unequal, all equally dead. Caril Ann Fugate was the youngest person at 14 years old to be tried for first-degree murder in the United States. After a brief trial, Caril Ann was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. And in court, she screamed, "If you're going to give me life, give me the chair." Caril Ann's sentence was later reduced to 30 to 50 years. After 18 years of incarceration, Caril Ann was paroled, and she moved to Michigan.
I felt cheated, yeah. But see, I'm not gonna let the little green-raged monster destroy, what I have left of my life. I'm not gonna do it.
Since her release, Caril Ann has had several strokes and eventually married for the first time at age 63. And then she lost her husband in a car crash. Caril Ann Fugate has no children and currently resides in Ohio. She is 73 years old. Caril Ann wrote a note. Help. Police. Don't ignore. And stuck it in the pocket of her coat. on the first day, Charles Starkweather kidnapped her. That evidence was suppressed by the prosecution at her murder trial.
Did you ever break down and cry and beg Charlie to let you go or anything like that?
Yes, I cried all the way.
Now, had you gone with him for quite a while?
Yes, I went with him a year before, and then I told him I didn't want to see him again, but he came back. And after that Sunday, I went with him, and then I kept telling him to leave. And that Sunday, I told him to leave, and I told him I didn't ever want to see him again.
What had brought you to this conclusion? Why didn't you want to go with him anymore?
I think he's crazy.
Do you think that Charles got what he deserved when he was convicted to the electric chair?
That's not my place to say.
Thank you for listening. Be a Human meme.